I've been planning my retirement for 3 years, 7 months and 11 days. The math is simple. 7,300 days of service earns you a full pension and the right to never salute anyone again. This morning, 05:30 on a Tuesday in March, I'm exactly 48 hours from that finish line. Instead, I'm standing in an observation room carved into the bedrock beneath Groom Lake, watching a 3-meter tear in reality try to kill another piece of equipment. The rift hangs in the center of the chamber below, a vertical slash that looks like someone took a knife to the air itself. The edges shimmer, not like heat distortion, but like watching oil spread on water if the oil were made of light that doesn't quite match the spectrum you're used to. It's been stable for 6 days now. Stable enough that the brass decided we're going through. I check my watch. 5 minutes until briefing. Dr. Kate Wilson arrives first, carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who hasn't slept. She's 42, Cambridge-trained, and the only physicist at Area 51 who actually reads the safety protocols instead of signing off on them. Her hair is pulled back in the same tight bun she's worn every day for the 8 months I've known her, and there's a coffee stain on her sleeve from yesterday that she either hasn't noticed or doesn't care about. The magnetic field readings are still fluctuating, she says by way of greeting. Plus or minus 12% variance every 7 minutes. Is that a problem? I don't know. We've never had a rift before. She pulls up a chart on her tablet, all jagged lines and error bars. The math says it should be stable. The equipment keeps dying. Lieutenant Mitchell Fraser walks in next, moving like someone who spent 8 years in special forces before transferring to whatever alphabet agency recruited him. He's 29, built like he lives in a gym, and has the unsettling habit of maintaining eye contact 3 seconds longer than comfortable. Good traits for security, less good for small talk. Perimeter's clear, he reports. No unauthorized access in the last 12 hours, though I'm still not convinced that matters when we're dealing with something that could theoretically punch through from the other side. The other side isn't hostile, I say. We don't have any evidence of hostility. We don't have any evidence of anything, sir. That's the problem. Chief Engineer Paul Dietrich is last, exactly on time. He's 56, German by way of Texas, and has the kind of face that makes you think he's heard every joke you're about to tell and didn't find it funny the first time. He's worked on classified propulsion projects for 3 decades and treats the impossible like a particularly annoying bureaucratic hurdle. Equipment check, I ask. Suits are functional. Communication gear tested and retested, emergency beacons are synced to the facility uplink, though obviously we have no idea if they'll work through that. He nods toward the observation window and the rift beyond. I've packed redundant everything. If something fails, we have backups. If the backups fail, we improvise. I turn to face my team, the 4 people who will either make history or become a classified footnote in a file that won't be declassified for 75 years. Final briefing, I say. We go through at 0600. Primary objective, establish contact and assess conditions. Secondary, determine if sustained passage is viable. Tertiary, return alive with actionable intelligence. Questions? What's the abort protocol if conditions are hostile? Fraser asks. We return immediately. The rift has been stable for 6 days, but that doesn't mean it'll stay open. If anything suggests it's collapsing, we pull back. No heroics. Wilson raises her hand slightly, a habit from academia she's never broken. What if we encounter people? Then we follow first contact protocols, non-threatening posture, minimal information disclosure, standard diplomatic procedures adapted for the completely unprecedented scenario of meeting ourselves from another dimension. I let that sink in. Because that's what we're assuming. The probe we sent through 3 days ago returned with atmospheric readings, soil samples, and photographs that suggest Earth-standard conditions. The footage showed structures, human structures. Dietrich grunts. Could be ruins. Could be, but the buildings had lights on. Below us, in the chamber, a technician in a reinforced suit approaches the rift with a handheld sensor array. She gets within 2 meters before her tablet screen spiderwebs from the center outward. cracks spreading like ice on a windshield. She drops it immediately, backs away, and makes notes on a paper clipboard. "That's the 6th one this week," Wilson says quietly. "I've noticed. Every electronic device brought within 2 meters of the rift has died or malfunctioned. Tablets, phones, digital cameras, all compromised. The instrumentation we're bringing through is hardened military spec, shielded and redundant. It'll work until it doesn't. The working theory," Wilson continues, "is that the rift generates some kind of electromagnetic pulse or exotic particle radiation that degrades solid-state electronics. But that doesn't explain why analog equipment is fine, or why the damage patterns are inconsistent. Your recommendation? Don't rely on anything with a processor." I check my watch again. 4 minutes. "Gear up. We leave on schedule." The crossing chamber is freezing from the way the rift seems to pull heat from the air around it. Or maybe that's psychological. I've been a soldier long enough to know that fear and cold feel identical in your gut. We're wearing modified hazmat suits, bulky and uncomfortable, with reinforced helmets and rebreather systems. The suits are bright orange with reflective strips, so we're visible if we end up somewhere without light. Each of us carries a pack with 72 hours of supplies, medical equipment, and enough redundant communication gear to open a Radio Shack. Fraser checks his sidearm for the 3rd time. I don't blame him. "Radio check," I say into my helmet mic. 3 voices confirm. Wilson sounds tense. Fraser sounds alert. Dietrich sounds bored. The rift hangs 5 meters ahead, perfectly vertical, its edges catching light that doesn't belong to our spectrum. I've stared at it for 6 days through observation glass, watching scientists take measurements and generals make decisions. Up close, it's worse. There's a sense of wrongness that bypasses rational thought and goes straight to the part of your brain that remembers being prey. "On my mark," I say. 3, 2, 1. I step through. The sensation is immediate and total. Every nerve ending fires at once, the signal that usually precedes pain. It feels like being pulled through ice water while someone scrapes the inside of your skull with frozen wire. My vision whites out. Sound distorts into a high-pitched whine that might be the rift or might be my own nervous system screaming. Then it stops. I'm standing in the same chamber, except I'm not. The dimensions match exactly, 20 meters by 15 with a ceiling height of 8 meters. The layout is identical. The same support pillars, the same door placement, the same general architecture. But this version looks like it was built yesterday and maintained by people who care. The walls are smooth metal alloy without a single scratch or weld mark visible. The floor is seamless polymer that shows no scuff marks, no wear patterns, no evidence that anyone has ever walked on it. The lighting comes from panels embedded in the ceiling, something that produces a white light so clean it makes my eyes water. Behind me, the rift crackles. I turn and see my team emerging one by one, each of them stumbling slightly as they cross. Fraser immediately takes a defensive position, weapon raised. Wilson drops to one knee, keeping a cautious 4-meter buffer from the tear, and starts taking readings on her handheld sensor. Dietrich just stands there, looking around with the expression of someone mentally cataloguing every detail. "Radio check," I say. 3 confirmations. The comms work. "Air quality?" I ask Wilson. She's already checking her sensors. "Breathable. 21% oxygen, standard pressure, temperature is 22 degrees Celsius. Particulate count is..." She pauses. "Negligible. This air is cleaner than a surgical ward." "Radiation. Hold on." She takes another reading, frowns, takes it again. "Colonel, background radiation is reading 60% lower than Earth normal." Before I can process that, the door opens. 3 people enter, wearing white uniforms without insignia, patches, or visible rank. They move with confidence, but not aggression. The woman in front is maybe 45, with dark hair cut in a style that manages to be both professional and casual. She smiles like she's greeting expected guests. Colonel Graham Cutler, she says. Welcome. I'm Director Elena Marshall. I didn't give her my name. We didn't transmit identity information through the rift. She knows who I am. Fraser's weapon is still raised. Marshall glances at it with the mild interest of someone noting a fashion choice. That won't be necessary, she says. You're safe here. You're all safe. How do you know my name? I keep my voice level, professional. We've been monitoring the dimensional breach since it opened. We've observed your preparations, your probe launches, your team assignments. We know who you are because we've been waiting for you. Wilson stands slowly, her sensor array still in hand. You've been watching us? Observing, Marshall corrects gently. Not watching. There's a distinction. We don't invade privacy. We simply track significant events at the convergence point. The convergence point? The rift. The bridge between our Earths. Marshall gestures to the space behind us where the rift hangs, identical to the one on our side. You're not the first to attempt contact, Colonel. You're just the first to succeed in stabilizing the breach long enough for transit. Where are we? Dietrich asks. Groom Lake, Nevada, the United States, Earth. Marshall's smile widens slightly. Your Earth and ours diverged at some point in the past. Different choices, different outcomes. But the geography is identical. You're standing in the exact same facility you left. Different outcomes, I repeat. Meaning we'd very much like to show you. If you'll follow me. I glance at my team. Fraser still has his weapon ready. Wilson is pale but composed. Dietrich nods once. His version of saying the situation is manageable. Lead the way, I tell Marshall. The elevator is unsettling in its perfection. The walls are brushed metal without a single fingerprint. The buttons respond to touch with no wear around the commonly used floors. The ascent is silent, completely absent of the mechanical sounds I've spent 34 years learning to ignore. Marshall stands beside me, hands clasped behind her back, radiating the calm confidence of someone who has never been in danger. How long have you known about the rift? I ask. 16 years. We detected the first dimensional fluctuation in 2009. It took time to understand what we were observing, and more time to realize that our own membrane tests had revealed another Earth on the other side. You didn't try to contact us? The breach was unstable. Any attempt from our side would have destabilized it further. We waited for you to solve the stability problem. She glances at Wilson, which your team did admirably. The mathematics required to maintain coherence across dimensional boundaries are challenging. Wilson doesn't respond. She's staring at her sensor readout like it personally offended her. The elevator doors open onto the surface. I step out expecting Nevada desert. Instead, I find myself standing at the edge of a cultivated green space, actual grass, maintained and healthy, stretching for 100 meters in every direction. Beyond that, structures rise in the distance. Organic curves and clean lines that suggest architecture designed by people who never had to compromise on materials or budget. The sky is blue, perfectly blue. No haze, no distant brown smudge of pollution, just clean atmosphere stretching to a horizon that looks sharper than anything I've seen in 20 years of military service. What happened here? The question comes out before I can stop it. We made different choices. Marshall starts walking down a paved path, and we follow because there's no other option. In 1958, our scientific community achieved a breakthrough in understanding entropy displacement. It changed everything. By 1973, we'd eliminated infectious disease. By 2002, warfare became obsolete. Resource scarcity was solved by 2007. Dietrich stops walking. That's not possible. It shouldn't be, Marshall agrees. But it is. I'll show you the research. You'll have access to our archives, our facilities, everything you need to understand how we achieved what we did. Why? Fraser's voice is sharp. Why give us access? Why help us at all? Marshall turns to face him. Because we've been watching your Earth for 16 years, Lieutenant. We've observed your struggles, your conflicts, your suffering. We've seen what entropy looks like when it's not managed properly. Managed. Wilson repeats quietly. Entropy is the universe's tendency toward disorder, disease, decay, death, all natural processes. But natural doesn't mean inevitable. Marshall resumes walking. We learn to redirect those processes, to manage them rather than endure them, and we want to help you do the same. I watch her back as she walks, noting the way she moves with absolute confidence, the way her uniform shows no wrinkles or stains, the way everything about her suggests a life lived without friction or consequence. What did you mean? I ask, when you said entropy needs to be managed properly. I meant that every system has a balance point, every choice has a cost. We found a way to minimize ours. She glances back at me. But that's a longer conversation, Colonel. First, let's get you settled. You must be exhausted from the crossing. We walk in silence for another 2 minutes. The path leads to a facility that looks more like a university campus than a military installation. People move between buildings wearing casual clothes, talking in small groups, laughing. No one looks rushed. No one looks worried. No one looks real. This way, Marshall says, guiding us toward a building with glass walls and a roof covered in solar panels. We've prepared quarters for you. Comfortable, I hope. Tonight we'll have dinner and discuss what you'd like to see tomorrow. The full tour or a focused examination of specific technologies? The full tour, I say immediately. Everything, of course. Marshall holds the door open. Whatever you need. Inside, the facility is equally pristine. The hallways are wide and well lit. The floors gleam. Everything is maintained to a standard that suggests either unlimited resources or a completely different understanding of how materials degrade over time. We reach a cafeteria, an actual dining space with real furniture and what looks like real food being prepared in an open kitchen. Marshall gestures to a table near the window. Please sit. You must be hungry after the crossing. The dimensional transit depletes blood sugar dramatically. We learned that the hard way during our early experiments. The food arrives within minutes. Actual chicken, vegetables that look fresh, bread that's still warm. It's served on ceramic plates by people wearing comfortable uniforms who smile and ask if we need anything else. I eat mechanically, watching my team. Wilson picks at her food, still studying her sensor readout. Fraser eats quickly, his eyes constantly scanning the room for threats that don't exist. Dietrich cleans his plate and asks for seconds. Marshall sits across from me, not eating, just watching us with the patient attention of someone who has all the time in the world. Colonel, she says eventually, you've been studying us since you arrived. What have you noticed? I set down my fork. The radiation levels are wrong. The air is too clean. Your technology is at least 30 years ahead of ours, and every single thing I've seen is maintained to a standard that requires either unlimited resources or physics that doesn't match what I know. Excellent observations. What else? I look at her hands, folded on the table. Her face, unlined except for faint creases around her eyes. Her colleague behind her, a man in his 50s who's pouring water from a pitcher. No scars, I say quietly. None of you have any scars. Marshall's smile doesn't change, but something in her eyes shifts. Very observant, Colonel. That's correct. We don't scar anymore. We don't get sick. We don't suffer the normal degradations that come with being human. How? Medical technology, cellular regeneration, preventative care taken to its logical conclusion. She leans forward slightly. We don't get sick because we don't carry the burden anymore. It's the word anymore that stops me, as in there was a before. What burden? I ask. Marshall stands, collecting her tray. That's a conversation for tomorrow, Colonel. After you've rested, after you've seen more of what we've built. Context matters for this discussion. She pauses at the table edge. But I promise you'll have answers. Complete transparency. That's why we welcomed you here, to show you everything. She walks away, leaving us alone in a cafeteria that's too perfect, on a world that's too clean, surrounded by people who have no scars to prove they've ever been hurt. Wilson leans over. Colonel, those radiation readings. I've been thinking about what could cause that kind of reduction. And nothing natural. Nothing I can explain with any physics I know. She glances around, lowers her voice. Whatever they did to make this place, it changed something fundamental about how reality works here. Fraser sets down his water glass. We need to find out what that is. We will. I stand, my body still aching from the crossing, my mind trying to process 6 impossible things before dinner. Tomorrow, we get the full tour. We ask every question we can think of, and we find out exactly what the hell is going on. But even as I say it, I'm thinking about Marshall's words. We don't carry the burden anymore, which means someone else does. The quarters they've given us have windows that face east. I watch the sunrise through glass that's so clean it might as well not exist. The sun comes up over mountains that look exactly like the ones outside Groom Lake, except there's no visible military infrastructure, no radar installations, no evidence that anyone here ever felt the need to defend anything. I slept 3 hours. My body knows something's wrong even if my brain is still cataloguing evidence. Fraser knocks at 0600, already dressed and alert. Perimeter walk? We leave Wilson and Dietrich sleeping and take the path Marshall showed us yesterday. In daylight, the facility looks even less like the military installation it supposedly is. There are no checkpoints, no armed guards, no security protocols beyond a few cameras mounted discreetly on building corners. We pass a dozen people heading to early shifts, and not one of them looks at us with suspicion or curiosity. This doesn't make tactical sense, Fraser says quietly. We're unknown entities from another dimension, and they're treating us like visiting academics. Maybe they don't have anything to fear. Or they know something we don't. He stops at a junction where the path splits. I want to do a full reconnaissance tonight. Map the facility, identify critical infrastructure, find out what they're not showing us. Marshall said we'd have access to everything. People always say that, sir. They never mean it. Marshall meets us at breakfast with a man she introduces as Dr. Simon Fitzgerald, their lead researcher in what she calls cross-dimensional resonance studies. Fitzgerald is maybe 50, thin, with wireframe glasses and the distracted manner of someone who forgets to eat because equations are more interesting than food. Remarkable achievement, he says, shaking my hand with surprising enthusiasm. The stabilization field you developed, the mathematical elegance is quite beautiful. We've been analyzing the resonance patterns since you established the bridge. You could see our side. Observe, yes. The dimensional membrane is essentially transparent to certain wavelengths. We've maintained observation anchors since 2009. He gestures for us to follow. I'll show you the data archive. I think you'll find it illuminating. The research facility is a 10-minute walk. Inside, it has the quiet concentration of a university library combined with technology that belongs in science fiction. Fitzgerald leads us to a workstation where 3 monitors display more information than I can process at once. This is our Earth observation system, he says, pulling up a 3-dimensional map. It takes me a moment to recognize it. Earth. Our Earth. We track dimensional resonance across multiple metric categories. Electromagnetic patterns, gravitational fluctuations, entropic density variations. Wilson moves closer, her professional interest overriding caution. Entropic density. The local concentration of decay processes. Disease, structural failure, organic decomposition. All processes generate measurable signatures. He zooms in on the map and I realize the red overlays aren't arbitrary. They're concentrated over specific locations. For example, here's Detroit, high entropic density. Here's Guatemala City, also elevated. This region in sub-Saharan Africa, very high readings. You're monitoring disease outbreaks, Wilson says slowly. Among other things, natural disasters, infrastructure collapse, conflict zones. Fitzgerald pulls up another screen showing data tables with numbers that scroll too fast to read. We maintain comprehensive records. Cancer rates by region, seismic activity, pandemic progression curves, casualty estimates from armed conflicts. How? I ask. How do you have current data on our Earth? The observation anchors I mentioned. They're non-intrusive monitoring systems that track entropic dispersal efficiency across the dimensional boundary. He says it like it's obvious. We've been collecting this data for 16 years. Before that, we extrapolated backwards using historical models. He opens another file, and I see dates stretching back to 1958. Rows and columns of information. Influenza death rates, industrial accidents, famine casualties, earthquake magnitudes. All categorized, quantified, tracked. Why? The question comes out harder than I intended. Fitzgerald blinks behind his glasses. To monitor the absorption gradient, of course. To ensure the system remains balanced. He glances at Marshall. Did you not explain the displacement mechanism? We're building to that, Marshall says smoothly. Colonel Cutler and his team are still acclimating. Context is important. Of course, of course. Fitzgerald turns back to his screens, already losing interest in us. The data is fascinating regardless. The correlation between entropic density and population centers is particularly revealing. It suggests, Dr. Fitzgerald, Marshall interrupts gently, perhaps we should move on to the atmospheric studies. Less immediately complex. But I'm still staring at the map, at the red heat signature overlays marking every disaster zone on our planet. Wilson has her tablet out, photographing the screens when she thinks no one's looking. Dietrich stands completely still, his face carved from stone. Show me Bangladesh, Wilson says suddenly. 1978. A graph appears, smallpox cases plotted over time, showing a spike in late 78 that killed thousands before containment. Show me Haiti, 2010. Another graph. Earthquake magnitude, casualty estimates, infrastructure damage. Ebola, 2014. Fitzgerald pulls it up without hesitation. Every data point meticulously recorded. You're tracking every disaster that happens on our Earth, Wilson says. In real time, with accuracy that suggests either satellite surveillance or something we can't detect. The observation anchors are undetectable from your side, Fitzgerald confirms. They operate on frequencies your instrumentation can't measure. We learned early that visible monitoring would cause complications. Marshall steps forward. I think that's enough data analysis for this morning. Colonel, there's much more to see. Dr. Fitzgerald, thank you for your time. We're guided out politely but firmly. In the hallway, Marshall walks slightly ahead, her posture suggesting the conversation is over. What's the absorption gradient? I ask her back. She doesn't stop walking. A technical term. We'll discuss it when you've seen more of the facility. You have comprehensive data on every crisis on our planet. You've been watching us like we're a lab experiment. We've been observing, Marshall corrects. There's a difference. Is there? She stops, turns to face me. The warmth from yesterday is gone. Colonel, I promised you complete transparency. You'll have it. But some explanations require foundation. Let me show you more, then we'll talk. Properly. That night, Fraser leaves our quarters at 2200 hours. I'm still awake, sitting by the window when I see him slip out the building's side exit and disappear into the manicured darkness. He returns at 0230, moving fast. He doesn't bother being quiet. Found something, he says, spreading a hand-drawn map across my desk. 3 kilometers northeast, circular structure, mostly underground, 30-centimeter walls, composite I couldn't identify. Heavy security compared to the rest of the facility, but still minimal by any reasonable standard. What's inside? Turbine, at least that's what it looked like. Maybe 5 meters in diameter, spinning at constant velocity, surrounded by monitoring equipment and technicians in full protective gear. He taps the map. Whatever that facility does, it's important, and they don't want us asking about it. Guards see you? 2 patrols. Neither reacted. Either their security is incompetent or they don't care if we wander. Or they expected it. I look at his map, at the careful notations marking distances and structural features. Good work. Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'm done being patient. I find Marshall at breakfast and don't bother with pleasantries. We need to talk. Privately. She considers me for a moment, then nods. Of course. This way. She leads me to a briefing room in the administration building. No windows, just clean walls and a table with built-in displays. Once the door closes, she activates a wall screen showing Earth, our Earth, rotating slowly. You've been tracking our disasters, I say. You have real-time data on disease outbreaks, earthquakes, conflicts. You maintain records going back over a century. And there's a facility 3 kilometers from here that's under heavier security than anything else we've seen. You've been busy. Answer the questions. Marshall pulls out a chair, sits. Yes to all of it. We track your Earth's entropic events. We maintain comprehensive historical records. And yes, there are facilities here that serve specific purposes related to the dimensional connection. What purposes? Maintenance, monitoring, ensuring the system remains stable. She gestures to the chair across from her. Sit down, Colonel. This is the conversation where I tell you everything, but you should be sitting. I remain standing. Start talking. She activates another display. Documents fill the screen. Research papers, technical specifications dated 1958. That year, our scientific community made a breakthrough in quantum physics. They discovered that entropy, the universe's tendency toward decay and disorder, could be manipulated, redirected. Redirected where? Across dimensional boundaries, to alternate realities with compatible resonance frequencies. She pulls up equations I don't understand. Entropy can't be destroyed. Its increase can be redirected. It can be transferred. Every disease that doesn't happen here, every earthquake that never strikes, every accident that doesn't occur, all that entropy still exists. It just exists somewhere else. The room tilts slightly. I grip the back of the chair. You're saying you send your disasters to us. We shunt entropy across the dimensional membrane to a compatible receiver. Your Earth became that receiver because your reality has the correct resonance frequency to accept the transfer. It's not malicious, it's simply physics. She stands, walks to the screen. We didn't create net new entropy. We redirected what would have occurred naturally here to occur there instead. How long? The first successful displacement occurred in March 1958. We've maintained continuous operations since then. My legs decide sitting is necessary after all. I drop into the chair. Every disaster on our Earth, every pandemic, earthquake, industrial accident. You did that. We facilitated the natural entropy discharge in a specific direction. The disasters would have happened regardless, just on one Earth or the other. We chose ours to be spared. You chose. I'm gripping the chair arms hard enough to hurt. You decided our planet gets your disasters. Someone has to carry the weight, Colonel. The universe demands balance. We simply ensured it wasn't us. She activates another display and my heart stops. Live feeds, dozens of them. A hospital in Detroit where nurses move between beds filled with patients. A village in Guatemala where the ground has opened into a chasm. A highway in Germany where emergency responders work an accident scene involving 12 vehicles. 97 simultaneous events, Marshall says quietly. All tracked in real time. All entropy that would have manifested on our Earth if we hadn't redirected it. Every cancer patient, every car crash victim, every person buried in an earthquake. They're carrying the burden we chose not to bear. Each feed has a code in the corner. Classifications. Entropy metrics, measured in units I don't recognize. The facility Lieutenant Fraser found, I say. That's how you do it. One of 412 facilities worldwide. Each maintains a section of the dimensional membrane. The system requires constant monitoring, continuous power, precise calibration. But it works. It's worked for over a century. She turns off the displays. And it's permanent. The connection between our Earths is stable now. Attempting to destroy it would cause catastrophic dimensional instability. The only variable left is management. Management. Who oversees the system? Who decides when to modulate the flow? Where to direct specific types of entropy? How to respond when the absorption gradient becomes uneven? She sits across from me. That's why we wanted to make contact. Because the system is permanent, but the administration doesn't have to be ours alone. You're offering us a say in our own suffering. I'm offering you a partnership, a chance to work with us rather than remaining victims of a process you don't understand. She leans forward. You can't stop the entropy transfer, but you could help manage it. Ensure it's distributed equitably, that it serves some purpose rather than falling randomly. You could minimize the damage. By collaborating with the people causing it, by acknowledging reality and working within its constraints. We're not monsters, Colonel, we're pragmatists, and we're giving you something no one else would, the truth and a seat at the table. I stand. My legs barely hold me. I need to talk to my team. Of course. Take whatever time you need. She walks to the door, opens it. But understand this, the system continues whether we have this conversation or not. The only question is whether you want influence over how it operates. I walk past her, down hallways that are too clean, past people who have never suffered a day they didn't choose to suffer. The morning sun streams through windows designed by architects who never had to compromise on materials because their world doesn't know scarcity. My team is waiting in our quarters. One look at my face, and they know. Tell us, Wilson says. So I do. Every word Marshall said. When I finish, no one speaks for 90 seconds. Dietrich breaks the silence. I spent 19 years building water purification systems in countries where children died from preventable diseases. Now I know why those diseases kept spreading despite everything we did. We should destroy it, Wilson says. The facility Fraser found. If we take out enough of them, Marshall says destroying the system causes dimensional instability, could collapse both realities. She could be lying. She hasn't lied about anything else. Fraser stands, begins pacing. We can't fight them militarily. We're 4 people in hostile territory with technology decades beyond ours. We can't sabotage the system without potentially killing everyone on both Earths. We can't negotiate because they hold every advantage. He stops. What can we do? We go home, I say. We report what we've learned. We let people smarter than us figure out the next move. And leave them operational, Wilson's voice cracks. Let them keep redirecting disasters to our planet while we file reports. What's the alternative? We're not soldiers anymore. We're witnesses to something so large we can't even see the edges. The only thing we can do is tell people what's happening. Will they believe us? I don't have an answer for that. Outside, the perfect sky stretches endlessly blue. Somewhere beneath our feet, 412 facilities spin turbines that make that perfection possible. And somewhere on our Earth, 97 disasters are unfolding because this world decided their suffering was acceptable, as long as it happened to someone else. Marshall said someone has to carry the weight. She just never asked if we wanted the job. Marshall comes for me at 1400 hours. No pretense of casual conversation this time. You wanted to understand the system, she says. Come with me. We take a vehicle, silent electric engine, seats that adjust automatically to body weight, across 3 kilometers of maintained landscape. Fraser's facility rises from the ground like a concrete crown, its circular structure descending into Earth in layers I can count from the surface. 30 meters down, maybe more. Inside, the temperature drops 15 degrees. The walls are composite layering I recognize from nuclear facilities. Lead, concrete, something crystalline that catches light wrong. We pass through 3 security checkpoints, each one staffed by technicians who nod at Marshall and don't ask why she's bringing a stranger into their most protected infrastructure. The core chamber is cathedral-sized. In its center, suspended by electromagnetic rails that hum with power, a sphere of what looks like mercury rotates at constant velocity. 3 meters in diameter. The surface ripples without breaking, patterns forming and dissolving too fast to track. The rails spark occasionally where they meet the sphere's equator, brief flashes that leave after-images. 20 technicians monitor stations arranged in a circle around the mechanism. Their screens show data streams, graphs, numbers that change too rapidly to read. 3 of them wear full protective suits, not hazmat, but something heavier. Radiation shielding, maybe. Or protection against something that doesn't have a name in my vocabulary. This is Facility 17, Marshall says. One of 412. Each maintains a section of the dimensional membrane. This one handles displacement for the North American West Coast region. A technician approaches, a woman maybe 30 years old carrying a tablet. Director, the rotation variance is holding at 0.03%, well within parameters. Thank you, Dr. Morrison. Marshall dismisses her with a nod, then leads me to a control station separate from the others. The interface is surprisingly simple. A touchscreen displaying a map of the western United States overlaid with color-coded zones. Green, yellow, red. This is real-time entropy distribution monitoring. Green indicates nominal baseline. Yellow shows elevated displacement. Red marks active transfer events. I count 7 red zones on the screen. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Phoenix, Las Vegas, San Diego. What does red mean? Active entropy discharge, right now 7.3% above baseline for this region, within normal operational variance. She touches the Los Angeles marker. A window opens, showing data I'm starting to recognize. Seismic activity predictions, disease vectors, infrastructure stress points, traffic accident probability curves. We can modulate these values. Watch. Her fingers move across the screen. The Los Angeles reading drops from 7.3 to 4.1%. An alarm sounds immediately. 2 technicians turn from their stations. Director, we're showing back pressure buildup in Sector 9, one calls out. Predicted cascade failure in urban power grid, estimate 4 minutes to manifestation. Another alarm. Bridge foundation stress in Sector 12, microfracture propagation detected. Marshall reverses her changes. The alarms stop. The Los Angeles reading climbs back to 7.3%. You see? She says. The entropy must go somewhere. Reduce it there, and the back pressure creates failures here. The system demands equilibrium. Show me targeting, I say. She pulls up another interface. This one displays disaster categories: seismic, disease, infrastructure, transportation, industrial. Each has a slider bar and numerical input. We can direct entropy type to specific geographical areas. For example, she adjusts the seismic slider for San Francisco, increasing it by 2%. This would elevate earthquake probability by approximately 15% over the next 6 months. You're causing earthquakes. We're redirecting seismic entropy that would naturally discharge somewhere, better San Francisco than here, where our architecture isn't designed to handle it. She resets the slider. Every facility has this capability. Collectively, they can reshape the entropic landscape of your entire planet. I stare at the controls. City names listed like menu items. Disaster types categorized like inventory. Intensity scales from 1 to 10, adjustable with a finger swipe. Take me back, I say. Our quarters feel smaller. Wilson is at the table, surrounded by papers, printed screenshots she's been taking covertly, spreading them out like evidence at a crime scene. Her eyes have the fixed intensity of someone who hasn't slept but won't admit it. Where's Dietrich? I ask. Locked in his room, won't answer. Fraser sits by the window cleaning his sidearm for the 3rd time today. Been silent since yesterday. Wilson looks up. I need to show you something. She's organized the screenshots chronologically: 1978, 2010, 2014, 2019, each one showing graphs I recognize from Fitzgerald's archive. Disaster magnitude plotted against time, with annotations in alt handwriting. These aren't just monitoring records, she says. They're experiments. Look at the notes. She points to a document dated March 1978. Bangladesh smallpox outbreak. They increased disease vector entropy by 43% to study population response patterns under sustained medical crisis. They deliberately amplified it. Haiti earthquake 2010. They modulated seismic displacement to achieve optimal urban collapse conditions for infrastructure failure analysis. Ebola 2014. They targeted specific regions to observe containment protocol effectiveness under resource scarcity. He spreads out more documents. They're not just dumping their disasters on us. They're conducting experiments, using our suffering as research data. I sit down because standing feels impossible. How do you access these files? Fitzgerald's workstation password was Entropy Prime. Their security is non-existent because they don't think we're a threat. She pushes the papers toward me. We have documentation. Proof. We take this home, and they can't deny what they've done. They don't care if we know, Fraser says quietly. They told us everything. They're not worried about exposure because they know we can't stop them. Someone knocks. I open the door to find Marshall, and behind her 2 men I haven't met. They wear the same white uniforms but carry themselves differently. Authority figures. Colonel Cutler, Marshall says. The Leadership Council would like to speak with you. Alone. I glance back at my team. Wilson's jaw is set. Fraser's hand rests near his weapon. From Dietrich's room, silence. I'll be back, I tell them. The Leadership Council meets in a building at the city centre. 10 stories of glass and white alloy that reflects sunset like polished bone. The conference room has windows on 3 sides, showing a city that looks like someone's idealized concept of urban planning. Green spaces between buildings, efficient transit systems, people walking without hurry or fear. 7 people sit at the table. Marshall introduces them. Directors of science, infrastructure, medical research, resource management, education, environmental systems, and something called entropic equilibrium oversight. This last one is a man maybe 60 years old named Director Haynes, who watches me with the patient attention of someone evaluating a specimen. Colonel Cutler, Haynes says, Director Marshall has briefed us on your team's discovery of our operational protocols. We appreciate your desire to understand the system fully. I understand it, I say. You're killing people on my Earth for your convenience. We're managing entropy distribution across dimensional boundaries. The deaths would occur regardless. We simply determine where... He folds his hands on the table. You're a military man. You understand acceptable losses, necessary sacrifices for strategic objectives. I understand logistics. This isn't that. It's exactly that. He activates a wall display showing both Earths side by side, ours marked with red zones, theirs pristine green. 2 worlds, 1 system. Total entropic load remains constant. The question isn't whether the suffering occurs, it's where. We chose to optimize for one world's survival rather than allowing both to bear random, unmanaged decay. You chose your world. Of course, wouldn't you? He zooms in on our Earth, highlighting disaster zones. The alternative was allowing entropy to distribute naturally. Half the population of both Earths dead from preventable disease. Constant warfare over dwindling resources, infrastructure collapse, societal breakdown. We prevented that for our world by engineering targeted discharge to yours. The mathematics are unambiguous. This system saves more lives than it costs. On your side of the equation. Precisely. He deactivates the display. Which brings us to our proposal. The dimensional bridge is permanent now. You can't destroy it without causing instability that would kill everyone on both Earths. You can't negotiate from a position of strength because you lack the technological capability to threaten us. Your only variable is participation. Marshall steps forward. We're offering you a position, Colonel. Guardian of Equilibrium. You would have administrative access to the displacement network. Full control over modulation parameters, regional targeting, disaster-type distribution. You could ensure that the entropy falls on those who deserve it rather than randomly. War zones instead of hospitals. Corrupt governments instead of innocent populations. You could impose order on the system. Make it fair, Haynes adds, or as fair as possible given the constraints. I look at the 7 directors sitting in their perfect city, offering me the job of deciding which children die and which don't. What if I refuse? Then the system continues under our administration. We'll continue our research, continue our experiments, continue optimizing for our benefit without considering your input. Marshall's voice softens. But you'd be walking away from the only leverage you'll ever have. The only chance to minimize the damage. Why me? Because you're career military. You understand chains of command, operational protocols, the necessity of difficult decisions made with incomplete information. You know that someone has to make these choices, and that indecision is itself a choice with consequences. Haynes stands, walks to the window. You've spent 34 years managing chaos, Colonel. This is simply a larger scale. We need an answer within 24 hours, Marshall says. Take the time, discuss it with your team, but understand, this is the only offer you'll receive. They leave me alone in the conference room with windows overlooking a city. Below, people walk through parks that grew from the bones of my world's suffering. Every clean street, every healthy child, every building that will never crumble, all of it purchased with entropy, redirected to families who will never know why their daughter got cancer, why the bridge collapsed, why the earthquake hit their neighborhood instead of the next one over. I think about the interface Marshall showed me. City names, disaster categories, intensity scales from 1 to 10. I've spent my entire career working with systems exactly like that. Target prioritization, resource allocation, acceptable loss calculations. The language of controlled violence made bureaucratic so people can do it without thinking too hard about what the numbers represent. This is just the same system with the quiet parts made explicit. Instead of collateral damage, it's entropy displacement. Instead of strategic necessity, it's dimensional equilibrium. The euphemisms are different, but the math is identical. Someone has to suffer, and you get to choose who. That should horrify me more than it does. The realization that doesn't is the truly horrifying part. I return to our quarters at 2100 hours. Fraser and Wilson are waiting. Dietrich's door remains closed. They made their offer, I say. I explain everything. The position, the access, the control. When I finish, nobody speaks for a long time. You're considering it, Wilson says finally. I'm considering our options. There's only one option. We go home. We report what's happening. We find a way to stop them. There is no way to stop them. Destroying the system kills everyone. Fighting them is impossible. The only variable is whether someone from our Earth has input into how it operates. Input into which of our people they murder. Her voice cracks. You'd be collaborating. I'd be trying to minimize. Don't. She stands abruptly. Don't use their language. Don't pretend there's a version of this where you're the hero. They're offering you a management position in a death machine. Say no and walk away. Fraser clears his throat. They offered me something too. Research position. Access to their dimensional physics. They said maybe I could find a way to reverse the flow, or at least minimize it. He won't meet my eyes. I'm thinking about staying. Fraser. Not to collaborate. To learn. To find their vulnerabilities. Someone from our Earth needs to be inside their system. Finally, he looks up. If the Colonel takes their offer, at least we'd have 2 people with access. 2 chances to find a solution they don't see coming. You're both rationalizing, Wilson says. Telling yourselves you'll be saboteurs when, really, you're just accepting their terms because it's easier than fighting. Dietrich's door opens. He stands in the frame, looking older than his 56 years. I spent 19 years building water systems in places where children died from preventable diseases, he says quietly. Now I know why the diseases kept coming back no matter what we built. Every filter, every purification plant, every well, all of it meaningless because they were actively targeting those regions for disease vector entropy. He walks to the table, picks up one of Wilson's screenshots. Bangladesh, 78. I'm not going home, he says. I'm staying, learning their systems, finding where they're vulnerable. Maybe it takes 10 years, maybe 20, but I'm going to find a way to break what they built, and I'm going to do it from inside where they won't see it coming until it's too late. 3 people looking at me, waiting for a decision I don't want to make. I need to see it again, I say. The control interface. I told Marshall I needed to understand the parameters before deciding. She'll give me access. Why? Wilson asks. Because I need to see if I can actually do it. Put my hands on controls that determine which city gets the earthquake, which hospital gets the outbreak, which highway gets the pileup. I need to know if I'm the person who could make those choices, or if I'll pull back when confronted with the actual mechanism. I need to know which frightens me more, the system itself or how familiar it feels. To make an informed decision, I say instead. Marshall meets me at the facility at 0300 hours. Couldn't sleep? Show me the full interface. No supervision. I want to see what the job actually entails. She leads me to a private control room away from the main chamber. Single workstation, 3 monitors, the same simple touchscreen controls I saw earlier. She logs in with a keycard and retinal scan, then steps back. Full administrative access, every facility worldwide, real-time modulation capability, historical analysis tools, predictive modeling, everything a guardian of equilibrium needs. She moves toward the door. Take your time, I'll be outside. I sit down. The screens come alive, maps of Earth, disaster-type categories, regional controls, intensity parameters, city names listed alphabetically, hundreds of them, each one with sliders for seismic, disease, infrastructure, transportation, industrial, weather, conflict. I touch Atlanta. The screen expands, showing current entropy allocation 4.7% above baseline. Predicted events over next 6 months, 312 traffic fatalities, 47 structural failures, 1,243 cancer diagnoses, 17 industrial accidents. I could reduce that. Move the sliders. Send the entropy somewhere else. Baghdad, maybe. A city currently experiencing conflict anyway. Or Bogota, or anywhere I decided deserved it more. The interface is terrifyingly intuitive. Everything color-coded, everything labeled, everything designed so that making these decisions feels no different than scheduling maintenance or allocating resources. It's just another protocol, another checklist, another day managing acceptable losses in a system too large to fight. I've been training for this job my entire career. That's the thought that makes my hands stop moving. The simple recognition that every briefing I've given, every casualty estimate I've calculated, every operation I've commanded, where I knew people would die, but proceeded anyway because the strategic objective required it. All of it has been preparation for exactly this. The difference is that before, I told myself the losses were necessary, unavoidable, the price of protecting something larger. This system makes the quiet part loud. All losses are choices. All suffering is allocated. And someone has to do the allocation, or else it happens randomly and you can't even pretend there was a reason. I close my eyes and see my life reduced to a single truth. I've always been a guardian of equilibrium. I just never knew the full scope of what I was equilibrating. When I open them, Marshall is standing in the doorway. "Well," she asks, I need to talk to my team one more time. Of course, she logs out of the system. But Colonel, the interface felt familiar, didn't it? That's because you've been doing this work all along. We're just offering you the truth of it instead of comfortable lies. She leaves me alone with screens that have gone dark, in a room buried beneath a world that purchased its paradise with my planet's pain. I don't know yet what I'm going to tell my team, but I know what frightens me most. Not that I might say yes, but that it wouldn't feel like surrender. It would feel like finally understanding the job I've always had. I return to our quarters at 0430. Wilson is still awake, surrounded by her documentation. Fraser sits by the window. Dietrich's door is open now. He's at the table, hands folded, waiting. There's something Marshall didn't tell us, I say. I need to confirm it first. I leave before they can ask questions. Fitzgerald works night shifts. I find him in the research facility, alone except for 3 monitors showing real-time entropy data from our Earth. He doesn't seem surprised to see me. Colonel, can't sleep either. The rift, I say. How did it form? He blinks behind his glasses. We initiated the breach. Took us 8 years to develop the targeting mathematics. Another 4 to build sufficient power infrastructure. You opened it from your side. Of course. Your Earth's technology isn't sophisticated enough to puncture dimensional barriers. We had to make first contact. He pulls up schematics showing power requirements that make nuclear plants look like batteries. The initial breach was only stable for 17 seconds. Your side kept it open by developing compatible resonance fields. Quite impressive work, actually. Dr. Wilson's stabilization equations were elegant. Why initiate contact at all? You've been operating for over a century without our knowledge. Because the system requires expansion. He opens a new file showing projections, graphs with ascending curves that hit critical thresholds. 67 years of continuous entropy displacement creates membrane stress. We need additional receiver worlds to distribute the load. Your Earth was proof of concept, verification that the targeting mathematics work, that stable transit is possible, that we can establish operational partnerships with alternate civilizations. How many other Earths? We've identified 6 additional realities with compatible resonance frequencies. Once we confirm your cooperation, we'll begin outreach. Within 20 years, we'll have a network of 7 Earths all sharing the entropic burden instead of your world bearing it alone. Much more equitable distribution. He says it like he's describing a humanitarian project. Marshall doesn't know I'm here, does she? She specifically asked me not to discuss expansion timelines with you yet. But you'll be Guardian of Equilibrium soon, so you'd find out anyway. He smiles. The position includes oversight of the expansion program. You'll help select which alternate Earths to contact first, establish the protocols for... I leave while he's still talking. My team is exactly where I left them. I close the door, check the room for surveillance devices I won't find because the alts don't think they need them. They opened the rift from their side, I say. This was always their initiative, and they're planning to expand. 6 more Earths recruited to share the entropy load once they confirm we'll cooperate. Wilson goes very still. They're building a network. 7 worlds, all serving as garbage dumps so this one stays clean. I pull out a chair, sit. Which means we have 18 hours, maybe 24, before they realize I'm not taking their offer. Once that happens, they'll start expansion regardless of our input. So we have no leverage, Fraser says. We have one option. I look at each of them. We split up. Wilson comes back with me. Fraser and Dietrich stay here. Why? Wilson asks. Because destroying the rift kills everyone, but we can make it unstable. Too chaotic for equipment transfer or regular transit. That cuts off their expansion plans. They can't recruit new Earths if they can't demonstrate stable passage. The entropy displacement continues, but they're locked into managing just 2 worlds instead of building their network. And we're trapped here, Dietrich says. You're inside their system. 2 people from Earth with access to their facilities, their research, their infrastructure. Maybe you find nothing. Maybe it takes 20 years. But you'll have time to look for vulnerabilities they don't know exist. Fraser nods slowly. While they think we're collaborators. Exactly. I tell Marshall I need to return home to arrange proper liaison infrastructure. Make it seem like I'm setting up for acceptance. She lets you two stay as good faith. Wilson and I cross through, then immediately destabilize the rift from our side. I turn to Wilson. Can you do it? Make the rift unstable without destroying it entirely. She's already calculating. The resonance equations are delicate. Introducing calculated variance into the field harmonics would create fluctuation patterns that prevent stable transit but maintain dimensional connection. It would take 6 hours, maybe 8, to recalibrate the field generators. How unstable. Imagine trying to walk across a bridge that's constantly shifting. Technically possible, but so dangerous only someone suicidal would attempt it. No way to transport equipment. No way to guarantee you'd survive. The connection exists, but it's unusable for their purposes. Dietrich leans back in his chair. They'll realize immediately. They will. But by then you're already embedded. 2 engineers who chose to stay who they think are interested in learning their technology. You become invisible because you're exactly what they expect. I meet his eyes. This only works if you can sell it. I've been selling belief in broken systems for 19 years, he says quietly. This one won't be different. Fraser stands, walks to the window. What do you tell the brass when you get back? Everything. The truth. Let them decide how to handle it. They'll classify it, bury it, pretend it didn't happen because acknowledging it means admitting there's no solution. Probably, but that's not our decision anymore. I stand. I'm going to Marshall, telling her I need to return home temporarily to establish proper infrastructure. That I'm leaving you two here as gesture of commitment. She'll believe it because it's what she wants to believe. Wilson grabs my arm. This is the only move. It's the only move that doesn't require me to become something I can't come back from. She lets go. Marshall takes the request exactly as predicted. Of course the Colonel needs time to prepare Earth for partnership. Of course he'd leave team members behind as good faith. She's already planning the integration protocols, the technology transfers, the expansion timeline. When will you return? She asks. 72 hours. I need to brief my superiors, arrange security clearances, establish communication protocols. Take whatever time you need. Fraser and Dietrich will be comfortable here. She smiles. I'm pleased you're choosing to work with us, Colonel. You're making the right decision. I let her believe that. 0600 at the rift chamber. Fraser and Dietrich stand on the alt side, wearing the white uniforms Marshall provided. They look like they belong. That's the point. Wilson and I wear the same hazmat suits we arrived in. Marshall escorts us to the threshold, still radiating confidence in a future that won't happen. 72 hours, she says. 72 hours, I lie. The crossing is worse this time. The membrane fights like it knows we're not coming back. My nervous system screams. Vision whites out. The high-pitched whine drills into bone. Then we're through. Groom Lake, our Earth. The chamber looks exactly as we left it. Scratched walls, scuffed floors, fluorescent tubes that buzz slightly out of sync. The General is waiting. 24 armed personnel behind him. Colonel Cutler, report. We need to lock down this facility immediately. No one in or out. And get me Dr. Kate Wilson's entire physics team, right now. The briefing takes 30 minutes. I tell him everything, the entropy displacement, the experiments, the expansion plans. He listens without interrupting, his face settling into the mask I recognize from when generals calculate acceptable losses. You're certain about this? Yes, sir. And you left 2 men on the other side. With full knowledge and consent. There are only intelligence assets inside the alt system. He turns to Wilson. Can you destabilize the rift? Yes, sir. 6 to 8 hours. The dimensional connection remains but becomes too dangerous for practical use. Do it. He signals his aides. Lock down Groom Lake. Classification level above presidential knowledge. Notify no one. If anyone asks, this facility is conducting scheduled maintenance. What about the entropy displacement? I ask. It continues regardless. That's a problem without a solution, Colonel. We can't stop it. We can't fight them. All we can do is prevent them from expanding and hope your men find something we can use. He looks old suddenly. Get the rift destabilized. After that, you're debriefed until we've extracted every detail you remember. Wilson works for 7 hours straight. I watch from the observation deck as she and her team recalibrate the field generators, introducing calculated variance into the resonance patterns. The rift starts to pulse irregularly, its edges fraying like torn fabric where they meet normal space. At hour 6, our boards spike red. If their monitors look anything like ours, Marshall is watching the same cascade and realizing what we've done. At hour 7, the rift collapses to a pinpoint of light that remains visible in the chamber's center. Proof the connection still exists, even though the bridge is gone. Wilson runs final diagnostics, confirms the field is fluctuating too wildly for stable transit. It's done, she says. They can't cross, we can't cross, but the entropy displacement continues. The dimensional membrane is intact. Fraser and Dietrich, trapped on the other side with no way home. I knew that would be the cost. Doesn't make it easier. The debriefings last 3 weeks, different teams, different rooms, same questions repeated until they're satisfied I'm not lying or mentally compromised. They verify Wilson's documentation, analyze the alt technology we brought back, run simulations on the entropy displacement mechanism. The conclusion is always the same. There's nothing we can do except wait and hope Fraser and Dietrich find a vulnerability. On day 22, Wilson brings me a file she's not supposed to show me. Mathematical proofs demonstrating that the entropy displacement creates cumulative energy imbalance across dimensional boundaries. Eventually, maybe 500 years, maybe 1,000, the system will reach critical instability and correct itself. It's not permanent, she says. Nothing that violates thermodynamic equilibrium can be permanent. The universe will collect what's owed. In 500 years. Give or take, but it means the alts are living on borrowed time. They just don't know it yet. I file the proof in my personal records, something to read when I need to believe cosmic justice exists on timescales irrelevant to human lives. I retire 30 days later with full honors, a pension I've earned, and a classification level that forbids me from ever discussing my final mission. The brass debates whether to court-martial me for abandoning team members or medal me for preventing alt expansion. They settle on neither. Just administrative discharge and a non-disclosure agreement that carries life imprisonment for violation. I buy a house in Montana, far enough from civilization that I won't be tempted to tell anyone the truth. The stars are clear here. No light pollution, no atmospheric haze, just clean darkness broken by pinpoints of light from nuclear reactions happening light years away. Some nights I think about Fraser and Dietrich on the alt Earth, learning their systems, searching for weaknesses in technology a century beyond ours. I don't know if they're alive. I don't know if they've made progress. I don't know if they hate me for leaving them there. But I know they're trying. The entropy displacement continues. Children still get cancer. Earthquakes still hit populated cities. Bridges still collapse. The alts still sit in their control rooms, managing the distribution of suffering with interfaces that make it feel like administrative work instead of systematic murder. I could have taken their job, become guardian of equilibrium, impose some version of order on the chaos, convince myself that optimization is better than random cruelty. That's the thought that wakes me up most nights. How close I came to saying yes. How familiar the interface felt. How easy it would have been to accept that someone has to make these decisions, and it might as well be someone who understands what the numbers represent. 3 months after my retirement, a classified courier brings a packet from Wilson, a hand-drawn reproduction of an alt maintenance board she reconstructed from the screenshots and notes we smuggled home. The annotations match Dietrich's field book habits, specific components circled, voltage thresholds penciled in. A vulnerability, maybe. Or maybe just the first step toward finding one. No message, no explanation. Just evidence that two men I left behind in paradise built on atrocity haven't given up. I print the photograph, pin it to my wall next to the mathematical proof that promises eventual cosmic correction. Evidence that resistance continues even when the odds are impossible. Proof that some people choose defiance over optimization regardless of the cost. Outside, a meteor streaks across the Montana sky. I count it. 1, then continue scanning for others. 2, 3, 4 by midnight. I mark each one in a notebook I keep by the window, tracking patterns that probably mean nothing but give structure to my nights. Counting is what you do when there's nothing left to manage but your own thoughts and the weight of knowing that somewhere, on an earth where children don't die from preventable diseases because those diseases were sent to our children instead, two men are inside the machine that creates that difference. Maybe they'll find a way to break it. Maybe they'll spend 20 years learning nothing useful. Maybe they're already dead,